note. I think I should be the minister of efficiency.
The Minister of Efficiency.
Got this down. I've got this efficiency thing down. Maybe you should. I mean, you listening to this at 1.25 speed so that you're 25% ahead of us at all points in time is pretty damn efficient.
I
Making
mean,
30 minutes.
yeah, I started listening again last night. And what's interesting is that now that I've been listening to it instead of reading it, I mean, it's reading is reading, but now that I've been listening to it and I've got this guy's voice in my head, like I can't, I have trouble sitting down and reading it with the breaks, like with the right pauses and everything. And I'm not an idiot. I know how to read a comma and how to read that. And that's something I prided myself on in grade school, was being one of the few kids in class who wouldn't just like a litany of words in any given book that we were supposed to read out loud um in high school or middle school. But I his rhythm, I'm so here for his rhythm that I might just keep listening instead of doing the hard copy of the book. I'm into it.
Yep, I believe you. Well, you're listening to the 2 month review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester, in which we take generally one book, this time two daunting books, challenging books, intimidating books, break them down week by week, section by section, talk about them, analyze it, have fun, make some jokes. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Kaija Straumanis, translator from the Latvian, senior editor, Open Letter, and all around good citizen. Yeah, no, I think that that's something that reading this book and like the article that I wrote that's coming out on Friday through the Mining the Delkey Archive Substack and the things going in the government, I think that that's a real criteria now. I think that's how we should identify. Are you a good citizen? And most people will be like, nah, man, I'm
Every
Elon.
time I see a police car drive by, I get a little nervous, even though I'm going the speed limit. So yeah, I'm a good citizen.
I was sitting at a red light with a sign that says, do not turn on red, not turning. And a cop came by and I was like, shit, shit,
Your
he got me.
palms start to sweat a little bit.
It was like, I wasn't even moving. Yeah, you can't trust those cops. I mean, that's for sure. So this season, we're starting out with Confidence Men by Herman Melville. Today, we're going to be covering up through chapter 19.
Oh,
Um,
so I am 0.25 ahead of you.
I know, that's what I'm
Fuck
saying.
yeah.
I told you,
Math. That's
Minister of
yeah, okay.
Efficiency. Fuck Elon, just replace him. And you should take over. Uh, so we're covering Confidence Man, and then after we do this, we have 3 weeks after this one, and then we'll move on to Melville by Rodrigo Frazan, which, as a little plug here, Across the Pond podcast interviewed Rodrigo yesterday. And it's a really great conversation with him and Lori Feathers and Sam. I forget what his last name is. It's not Jordanson. Sam from Galley-Beggar Press had a great conversation about Melville, about the influence of Melville. Talks about Confidence Man for a minute, and kind of as a good prelude for our second half of this particular season, the 2 month review. I have one other bookkeeping thing that I need to note, and this is a Chad problem, and I apologize to everyone thoroughly for this. But in transitioning on how we post the podcast, I duplicated it. I don't think it was my fault entirely. I think that the systems don't talk to one another. So there are two listings for the 2 month review. I will have a link in the show notes as to which one, both on YouTube and on the podcast, which one you should subscribe to. You're going to have to subscribe to a new feed to continue getting the 2 month review. That is my fault, in part. But if you're confused, just look at the 2 month review, and the one that has no ratings on it, that's going to be the permanent one going forward. So add your ratings. If you rated us before, add them now. Apple told me that it's not possible to like just switch them over or anything like that. That's an impossibility. So here we
Give
are.
us your confidence. Give
Yeah,
us your
do you have
confidence.
confidence in me? I don't.
If you have confidence,
Do you have confidence?
give
Do you?
us 5 stars for your confidence.
I'm sorry.
It's less than $100. Give us
Yeah.
5 star confidence.
And if you give us 5 stars, we're good people, we're good citizens. We'll give
We're
two
good.
two of those stars. We'll give two of those stars to another worthy podcast. Because that's what we do. We take half of our income and we donate it to another cause.
We might even recommend some tinctures.
Yeah, we've got some herbs. I've got some
Herb.
herbs. And tinctures, I think, was the medical one, whereas the herb guy was like less. He was like anti-tincture a little bit, but
I
I can't
mean,
remember.
tinctures, you can make tinctures of herbs.
I assume
Most of
so.
my tinctures are herbal.
He's this guy's more of a goop. This dude. Well, I don't want to jump ahead, but the herb
Sorry, a goop like a Gwyneth Paltrow goop?
like a Gwyneth Paltrow group. No, I was thinking of the cream and the clear. This is the guy who would work for Balco, serving up Jose Canseco with some steroids all of his life and all that stuff, and Barry Bonds. The herb doctor in here, or whatever he's called, this dude would have cream and cleared all over MLB for sure.
So like I think it's funny that you say goop and that makes me think of Gwyneth Paltrow because it makes me think of the like my or your whomever's vagina candle it was and how preposterous that was. There was like a big thing where it was
I
like
know.
the scent of the vagina because and it might just be me because I was listening to it so I didn't go back to compare the words, but the main medicine the herb doctor keeps mentioning like like mythic balsamic something something and doesn't it keep adding it seemed like it kept adding on words throughout some of the
Well, I don't know about the ingredients. What I do know is that he calls it different things.
yeah it's like tantamount to a vagina candle.
Yeah, he's a vagina cat. So, so let's get into this. I think that there's like three sections. Brian couldn't be with us today, but he sent a couple notes that we can possibly address in the middle of this. But we left off just to frame things. We're on a boat going down the Mississippi. There is a black beggar at the beginning who his legs don't work, and people are like, one guy in particular with a peg leg is suspicious of him. The black beggar is like, you need to go find these people. They'll account for me. They'll back me up. They'll tell you how great I am. And we start to kind of journey through like who those people are, and those people turn out to be almost to a T grifters of one sort or another. It just occurred to me now. Uh, what if the peg leg guy was a setup? Like, what if it's like a team game where he's like, don't trust this guy, don't give him anything, and that guy's like, go talk to these people, and those people are all just grifting everyone who comes, and it's all like a big conspiracy plot.
Again, and I know I say this with full recognition that we should all be wary of Mel Gibson, but the movie Maverick with Mel Gibson and Jodie Foster is one of, I think, my favorite movies of all time. And that's the big spoiler is that everyone's a fucking grifter, but it's so fucking fun because it's like I think you said in the first week, it's like grifts all the way down. And it's so silly. And I'm in the point now with this week and with these chapters where I am finally having fun with this book.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm finally having fun. I'm
That's inter
finally enjoying. I'm finally chuckling when things, especially I mean, and we'll get to it with chapter uh I forget which chapter the herb guy first comes in,
He
but
comes in after the weird authorial intervention chapter, which I could talk about for a long time.
yeah, I have like one-liner notes for each chapter from 10 through
Oh,
15, 10 through
perfect.
15, and then I just like forgot, I guess, or I was trying to power through. So
Yeah, this one I really like this book. I find it very fun and funny to read. This for whatever reason, this section I was having a hard time concentrating on, not because of any fault of it. I just had to keep rereading parts. So I'm like a little bit. I'm not going to be as crisp as usual on like these summaries. However, so we're on the boat. Everyone's sort of like conning each other. There's the what is it? The Black Rock, Black whatever. Um, company that is in dire straits because they've been sued or they had problems. And so their shares of their stock are very low valued. But a lot of people on this boat believe that they're going to jump up. And so the one guy is going around with this binder of the stock thing saying, "Oh, I can't do anything. I can't really like do business on this like steamboat going down the Mississippi." And then people are like, "Yeah, but could you though? Could you maybe if I gave you a little money?" And then they always do. Like they always
yeah.
conduct business. And that's where like this section starts is like is a couple of people like coming up and trying to or specifically the merchant wanting to work with him. The company is the Black Rapids Coal Company. And that's what he has that book of all the shares, and the merchant, who's identified as the merchant, talks to him and is like, "Come on, man, give me some shares. let's do this deal. And they do a little business in the cabin. What's your
Doing a little
one-liner for 10?
chapter 10, timely in the most absurd of ways, LOL stories being a vice.
Stories being a vice.
When he's talking, he goes in and it's like the guy who walks into the hall where everyone or the room where everyone's playing card games and it's like littered with the chat books for lack of better
Hmm.
with all the chat books. And then he sits down next to this old man and he starts talking and he's like, "Hey, like, do you want to play cards?" And the guy's like, "I don't do cards." He's like, "Well, how about a glass of wine?" He's like, "I don't do alcohol." He's like, "Well, how about a smoke?" He's like, "I don't do smoking." And he's like, "Well, tell me a story." And the man's like, "Boo."
Yeah, so that's actually perfect. To speak truly, I hardly think I know one worth telling.
Yeah,
That's what he
I
says.
just like that stories fell into a category of vices.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Gambling,
very funny.
gambling, alcohol, tobacco, stories, tales.
He's like, I just trust cards. There's also a reference in that where he's like, look, those are two card sharpers over there, aren't they? And they're like, yeah, I think they are. Like, they look suspicious. Everyone's suspicious on here.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and then I wrote down in here like yeah, it was basically like this feels like an intentional con this time with the merchant knowing like to get the shares. Like it feels like very thought out cons, which I
yeah,
think which I think one of the things that Brian mentioned that maybe worth talking about here is that he said like in a way this book is anti-American in a sense, not maybe I'm putting a little bit of words in his mouth, but the idea that the American person is like this is an Eden. They're the atom. They build like things based on their own internal and intrinsic worth and ideas and values, and that sort of thing is what creates our nation. And it's all through that sort of individual like strength and like uniqueness. And instead, in this book, almost everyone's reacting to a situation. Like the cons almost feel like not planned out. For the most part, they're just sort of like, oh, you came up and you're like, hey, you seem to have a little money. I got this charity called for widows and orphans. Want to give me a couple bucks? Or like there's the one I forget which all the characters are muddled in my head because they don't have names. They just have
yeah.
like those characteristics. But the one where I think it was the guy with the gray suit and the white cravat who takes aside someone and is like tells a story that we never hear. And the guy's like, "Oh, sure, here's some money." And like it feels like it was just like invented on the spot. And then there's
Yeah.
like this one where it feels like he's like, I'm going to con you. I'm gonna set out and like intentionally make this happen."
And isn't that one of the pillars of conning and I mean, I don't want to conning and being a con man or con person is that it's not just making people confident in you, but you're the confident one. So if you don't have a plan, you go into a situation, you're like, it might work, it might not. Like, what's the worst that happens? Nothing. You don't get a couple bucks out of Chad posts, so you move on to Brian Wood and you see what you
Yeah.
can get.
Yeah, that's true. Like the
What a
confidence.
positive outlook on life, man.
I mean, it is true. Like if you exude the confidence and get someone to make confident put their confidence in you, they're
Yep.
much more manipulatable.
Yep.
You know, I've been watching this documentary about Kundalini yoga. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this, but all the people involved in that are very confident and people fall in line very quickly. But that is one of the things that I do know. This is not because this book is not about cults per se, and is not about that sort of like
Not at all.
mass sort of like corruption and like and undue influence. But there is something similar, and there's something interesting, I think, is that there is that one, I forget what her name was, but there was this cult of this woman online who was like mostly like an online YouTube video person who convinced a lot of people to commit suicide because they would be reborn. And I listened to a podcast about it, and there was like an expert in this sort of manipulation, cult manipulation, but overall manipulation, in which if you get people to believe that they had a prior life, and that's part of one of the principles of your cult, so to speak, they're much more likely to always go along with you. And I feel like this book has a little bit of that aspect to it of like you get someone to believe in you in one way, to have confidence in one thing, and then you've got them. You just need like that first little hook. Sort of like when we talk about the Caesar Ira books. All the Caesar
Yeah.
Ira books work by like getting you to believe something absurd in the first few pages, and then it can do anything it wants.
Yeah. The suspension of absurdity versus the suspension of disbelief, I guess.
I guess. Sure, sure.
Why
S-
not?
So yeah, so they're in the cabin. They get this. It gets a little business done. Um, yeah, so they go to do the business. I like the title of chapter 11 is one of my favorite parts of this book. Just says only a page or so. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And my second note to the chapter is short AF, ha ha ha. And I think that's about when my martini was kicking in last night.
tracks, tracks. There's a old miser is introduced in here, and the worthy man is introduced. It is 3 pages in my book, so it's more than just a page there, Herman. Um,
Yeah.
math might not be your good suit.
What
Or,
are we looking at for footnotes though?
just a little bit, not a lot. They're
Okay.
they're pretty small actually. It has talks about symboline and then talks about how this hints at it's possible that they're talking about the black beggar at one point here. There's an allusion to he added that Negroes were by nature a singularly cheerful race. No one had ever heard of a native-born African Zimmerman or Torquemada, blah blah blah. And then it references that might be a hint. They're talking about that particular
Melville being a
and Melville
classic
being a racist.
racist, as Brian said. Yeah. No, that's a line that I ended up listening to a couple times because, like I said, and my first line note for chapter 11 is what is happening? Two exclamation marks. Is this fourth wall? More exclamation marks. Because I do like that sort of I do like that fourth wall look of looking at the book itself and the structures. But yeah, I remember that line very distinctly, and then I
It,
listened to it again this morning because I had to rewind a little bit. Or no, last night when I had to rewind a little bit, or this morning, doesn't matter. And then when you just read it again, like that line makes me super uncomfortable.
it's super uncomfortable, and it like goes on like that. I mean, to say that Melville is racist is sort of to like ignore that this is prior to the Civil War and
Yeah,
like the whole nature of like of being racist is kind of being invented in
yeah,
a sense at
that's
that
true.
point in time.
That's true.
But so he does, so it is super uncomfortable. And I think this whole part is like a little bit weird. So it says that no one's ever heard of a native-born African Zimmerman or Torquemada, that even from religion, they dismissed all gloom. In their hilarious rituals, they danced, so to speak, and as it were, cut pigeon wings. It was improbable, therefore, that a Negro, hate saying that word, however reduced to his stumps by fortune, could be ever thrown off the legs of a laughing philosophy. So it is like, I mean, it is very like cringy in the
Yeah,
sense that, like in a way like not mocking, but like being like, oh, well, those people are always happy, and
yeah,
it's really inappropriate by our standards today.
yeah. And that makes me think of Donald Glover's, I mean, I guess you could, let's say the work that he does in his music videos and portraying those sort of stereotypes and the very theatrical um yeah movements and expressions. But yeah, no, that's a fair thing to point out that it's I think if we look at it in the context of and what was this was 19, I keep forgetting, 18.
47 or 57,
Yeah, okay.
me too.
Where in yeah, at that point I don't think like it doesn't in that context it doesn't sound like it's coming from a mean place. It's coming from an observational
57,
place.
57, 4 years before the Civil War starts.
Whereas for us, we're just like, oh, bitch, you can't say that.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Now,
not.
in the footnote reference to this, one of the things that it mentions that is part of how this book works, and so like this part is cringy and whatnot, but it also does point to like how this book is functioning, where the reference to the laughing philosophy is Democritus was called the laughing philosopher in contrast to Heraclitus, who is the weeping philosopher who was just mentioned in the previous chapter. And like this book does move in like these pairings like that goes, they keep like it's sort of like the exchange of the money that gets moved along, but there's a lot of things that get paired. So there's like the Tacitus thing and then the opposite. A lot of these like there is kind of a Zen quality to the whole thing of having to have one side and then the other. And so the reference there as like racist today as it might be seems to be landing the emphasis on being able to talk about the humor side versus the weeping side, which just happened.
Yin yang. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, so they let's see what I put here, and then yeah, blah 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 blah.
That's
So yeah, so
interesting
they
because
do that.
it's interesting because other than that line, I didn't clock any of the I didn't really clock or pay attention to any of the character mentions that you just brought up. I was so taken with the like I said, the fourth wallness of looking at book structure and talking about the literature itself.
Yeah. Um,
Whoa.
so they
Okay, Kaya.
okay, Kai. No, I'm trying to figure out where to go. I was trying to find a
Yeah.
segue. I was trying to find a segue and I was not finding one. So I
Well, we
found
can just go to chapter 12. You said something earlier in this podcast about the style. I don't remember how you said it, but for 12, there for me was something very Shakespearean about the language and the
oh, mentioning
presentation.
symboling. There's a lot of Shakespeare references in here and a lot
This
about
one in
like the
particular.
transformations
Yeah,
and
this
the
one in
masks.
particular was like,
Well,
wait, what?
Goneril is a reference to King Lear. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so this part, chapter 12 that we're talking about, this is like a little, like, kind of like 2, 3 chapter vignette that's in here. This
Mhm.
section that we're covering, 10 through 19, fits very nicely into like three kind of components. And the first one is this business transactions taking place. Now he's got the shares. What are they going to do? They're going to tell a story. They're not going to drink or just smoke cigars. They're going to end up telling a story. And the story
Wait,
that is told,
this is the story that's being told?
yes.
Oh my God, I missed that. Okay.
So
Boom.
the story that
Ugh,
he's telling,
embarrassing.
so the merchant tells this story. He's like, I can, I got this. I've got this one. So he tells a story that's called the story of the unfortunate man, from which may be gathered whether or no he has been justly so entitled.
Mhm.
And the idea of whether or not this man is unfortunate is going to be like the motif of the next 3 chapters, I believe. But it's at least this one and the next one. And so the story is that Goneril is this woman was young. The descriptions of her also semi-misogynistic. Her hair was of a deep, rich chestnut, but worn in close, short curls all around her head. Fine. Her Indian figure was not without its impairing effect on her bust, while her mouth would have been pretty, but for a trace of mustache. Upon the
No.
whole, aided by the resources of the toilet, her appearance at distance was such that some might have thought her, if anything, rather beautiful, though of a style of beauty rather peculiar and cactus-like. I diss. So Goneril gets married to this dude. She's very independent, blah blah blah. But then she's known to have something called the evil touch, which
Yeah,
talks
Cactus
about
Lady.
yeah, Cactus Lady has they refer to it as a more powerful form of the evil eye, is the footnote that I have. So she touches people, bad things are gonna happen to them. She's like ice it describes her as being like an icicle dagger. Um, she's like overall like kind of considered within the context of this to be not the greatest, like sort of witch-like, has this evil touch, goes
Good
around
for her.
touching people. What's that?
Good for her.
Yeah, good for her, but like
I love that for her.
yeah. So let's see here. Where's a good example to use? Uh, so the guy, needless to say, what distress was the unfortunate man's when, engaged in conversation with company, he would suddenly perceive his Goneril bestowing her mysterious touches, especially in such cases where the strangeness of the things seemed to strike upon the touched person. Notwithstanding good breeding forbade his proposing the mystery on the spot as a subject of discussion for the company. In these cases, too, the unfortunate man could never endure so much as to look upon the touched young gentleman afterwards, fearful of the mortification of meeting in his countenance some kind of more or less quizzically knowing expression. He would shudderingly shun the young gentleman, so that here, to the husband, Goneril's touch had the dread operation of the heathen taboo. Now Goneril brooked no chiding. So then she gets jealous. The devil of jealousy enters her, and she's jealous of the daughter they have. So their daughter is 7. Man loves his daughter a lot, hanging out with her all the time. And then her own child, the girl of 7, her father's consolation and pet. And she starts to like have this jealousy and seems to be wanting to use the evil touch on the daughter. So the husband takes the daughter away.
Oh,
Um,
wait, quick question. The evil touch, it's not killing them, it's like making them squirrely, like
I
not
don't
squirrely,
know.
but like like self-aware or something.
It's not so in the company she had a strange way of touching, as by accident, the arm or hand of comely young men, and seemed to reap a secret delight from it. But whether from the humane satisfaction of having given the evil touch, as it is called, or whether it was something else in her, not equally wonderful, but quite as deplorable, remained an enigma.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. So then he leaves. He doesn't want his daughter to be around her. So he takes his daughter. Um, how does this all work? This I should have reviewed this before we went on here instead of just like trying to wing it. So it goes on. Da, 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 whereupon the whole female neighborhood, which hard though it was, he did. He takes away. He goes into domestic exile with his daughter. Whereupon the whole female neighborhood, who till now had little enough admired Dame Goneril, broke out in indignation against a husband who, without assigning a cause, could deliberately abandon the wife of his bosom, and sharpen the sting of her too, by depriving her of the solace of retaining her offspring. To all this, self-respect with Christian charity towards Goneril long kept the unfortunate man dumb. And well, it had that. And well had it been had he continued so, for when, driven to desperation, he hinted something of the truth of the case, not a soul would credit it. While for Goneril, she pronounced all he said to be malicious invention. Ere long, at the suggestion of some women's rights women, the injured wife began a suit, and thanks to able counsel and accommodating testimony, succeeded in such a way as not only to recover custody of the child, but to get such a settlement awarded upon a separation as to make penniless the unfortunate man, so he averred. Besides, through the legal sympathy she enlisted, effecting a judicial blasting of his private reputation. Nobody will ever have confidence in him. He then all ended by the unfortunate man subsequently getting wind of Goneril's intention to procure him so that he would be permanently committed for a lunatic, upon which he fled and was now an innocent outcast wandering forlorn in the great valley of the Mississippi with a weed on his hat for the loss of his Goneril. For he had lately seen by the papers that she was dead, and thought it but proper to comply with the prescribed form of mourning in such cases. For some days past, he had been trying to get money enough to return to his child, and was but now started with inadequate funds. So, in short, he finds her suspicious. She touches young men with the evil touch. We don't know what that does. She starts to get jealous of his relationship with his daughter. He takes the daughter away. She's like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Everyone posses up, gets her the daughter back and money, a la normal divorce in America today. And he broke is like off on his own, finds out that she dies, is trying to get back to his daughter, and doesn't have any money, but has to get some. And I'm sure that he's going to go about that in a very normal way.
Yep. Yep. Well, I I have a lot of thoughts about all the things you said, but the thing that I'm gonna pull away from that or like pull out from that is that what good is an evil touch if you still gotta go through the court system to fuck
Right,
someone over?
right.
I
I'm with
was
you.
really I was really invested in what this evil touch did, but I don't think I care anymore.
No, I mean it's weird. It's like a weird story, but then like the conversation transforms into like where the other guy that's with him, that's not the merchant, is like, that's not unfortunate. It's like that's not an unfortunate man at all. I mean, he
Yeah.
doesn't have to live with this woman who is like hideous and horrible and cactus-like and evil touching. Like he got off scot-free. Good for the man. Good deal. Not unfortunate. It's a weird chapter, weird section of this book to me in
Yeah.
terms of like what is the message here?
What is the message? It's not father's rights and it's not
It's
witch,
definitely
not
not.
witchery.
It's not. It's maybe anti-witchery a little bit, but it's like sort of like one of these where it's like, do you even believe this story?
Yeah. Do you have confidence in it, Chad?
I don't.
Mm.
I don't have confidence in anything. So yeah. So then the man, the traveling cap shows up. Let's see if there's anything in here. So that I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about related to the Goneril story, but it is so like in a way anti-women and like similar to like the part just before. It's kind of weird. It reads sort of strange. The idea of like the moral of this is like around there. I feel like I'm just missing something with the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, It makes me think of the mention of Cassandra later, and that just gets into a lot of like, I mean, the different kind of tempestuous women
Oh,
of history, so to speak.
there was
Both
one other part that I
both
wanted to
fictional and real.
there's one other part that I wanted to read that was like reinforcing the misogyny of it all. Um, but when the blemishes were displayed, her husband, no adept in the female nature, had tried to use reason with her instead of something far more persuasive.
Hmm.
Because, reason's not going to work on the ladies.
I suppose that persuasion is physical violence, but
I mean, it's not stated, but the follow-up line to that is hence his failure to convince and convert. The act of withdrawing from her seemed, under the circumstances, abrupt. In brief, there were probably small faults on both sides, more than balanced by large virtues, and one should not be hasty in judging. So there's it pulls back a little bit there, but like at the same time, it's a weird section. He goes on to be like, this is great for him because it was best for both of them. In short, with all sorts of cavaliers, it was best for both them and everybody that whoever had the true light would stick behind the secure Malakoff of confidence, nor be tempted forth to hazardous skirmishes on the open ground of reason. So like the idea of separation being better than fighting is
yeah.
interesting and good,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they sort of break apart once they do start getting pretty drunk, and the merchant says something that's offensive, the offensive to the other guy who I don't know what you want to call him, the businessman, and then they sort of like break apart, and we get chapter 14, which is wild. So apparently,
Mhm.
according to the footnotes in here, 33 and 44 are the same as this, where the author just comes in and talks. And
Yeah.
there's a moment that I think it was in Rodrigo's conversation about Moby Dick, where he says that his favorite parts are like there's like two or three lines where Melville just pops in and is like, I'm writing this at this point in time at my table in this place, and then disappears again and just like, just pops in and out. And this one he like very directly
Yes.
addresses the audience, like in a very like fourth wall breaking postmodern way. And the
Yes.
basic point of it is that people are going to say that these characters aren't consistent. And he's like, yeah, duh, nothing's consistent. People aren't consistent. None of it's
Yeah.
consistent. That's what this is.
Right.
That's how writers write, is that if you say the character is too consistent, that would be a fault. If you're like, this character isn't consistent throughout, then you're criticized for that. Like you can't win either way.
Marvel's
Um,
just like, listen, I know.
if reason be judged, no writer has produced such inconsistent characters as nature herself has.
Yep. Yep. And those are great lines. And that's like, it's moments like these where it's funny because I think I read Rodrigo before I read Melville, even. So it's interesting to kind of work backwards and see.
Oh yeah.
Um,
But this is the part that's the pro part. Just to read there's a great lines in this section because it really is just like it's sort of like Robert Musil does something where it's like essayistic, like it's a lot of things that are like supposed to be essays in a sense that became novels, and for one reason or another, and that makes them very curious as like artifacts because they just like exist in this way that doesn't always abide by like what we see as traditional novelistic conventions, especially in this point in time where like we said last week, I think that most books are romances. Most things are like sort of like plot heavy. They follow certain tropes. They work in certain ways. And then you have this where it's like this isn't really like the illusion of like these things being real. So here's one. But though there is a prejudice against inconsistent characters in books, yet the prejudice bears the other way. When what seemed at first their inconsistency, afterwards, by the skill of the writer, turns out to be their good keeping. And at the end, he says, but enough has been said by way of apology for whatever may have seemed amiss or obscure in the character of the merchant. So nothing remains but to turn to our comedy, or rather to pass from the comedy of thought to that of action. And then the third part totally changes. We've got an old miser who's like not wanting to spend money, who gets totally conned, like totally straight up conned by the herb dealer. What do they call him? I keep wanting to call him an herb dealer, but that's not
they're
right.
just the herb man.
The herb
Or
doctor. The herb
herb doctor.
doctor. Yeah, who's selling Omni Balsamic Reinvigorator.
That's what it is. Yeah. Omni balsamic reinvigorator, which I can't even say because it's such bullshit. It's
It's
awesome.
it's amazing. This section is amazing because the miser is like, I had no money. He's like, give me your confidence. I'll give you your confidence. He's like, what's the problem? He's like, I've got no energy. And like, he's like, well, I was treated by like someone that did like a mineral based like something to help him out to get his energy back in his blood, adding iron to his blood because iron makes you strong. Therefore, if you have iron in your blood, it'll make you strong. And the herb doctor's like, what a bunch of bullshit. That's like you like have a skeleton and you feed it fat and then it gets fat. Like that's not how it works. You gotta have herbs. You gotta have herbs and tinctures. You gotta have the Omni Balsamic Reinvigorator. That will give you your energy back. And herbs are a way, it's plant vegetation. And this is another of those combinations, mineral and vegetable being
Yeah.
connected here. Like this happens over and over again. And I wonder too, like, even going back to the woman thing, it's like the Goneril being like not a con artist, but like there's some connecting point, I'm sure, like
Yeah.
a side to it that I'm not thinking of right now. But the Herb Doctor is great. The Herb
Yeah.
Doctor is my favorite character.
Chapters 14 and 15 are definitely my favorites so far. And I love, like, that's my note. Chapter 14 is okay, now it's getting fun. And yeah, I love, he's like, just all the saying all the shit of like, well, this is what you do. And this is how you do it. And like, oh, you went to this water treatment overseas. That was a waste of your time. And
Yeah.
he's like, you have to take this medicine. And he's like, here, and like convinces the guy. And the old man, like right before he takes, he's like, okay, but like, what's in this? And the herb doctor's like, herbs.
Yeah,
And the
I'm not
guy's
gonna
like,
tell
yeah.
you.
Like, yeah, but what kind? And the doctor's like, man, I give up. You're sick and a philosopher. I can't help you. Like, I
Yeah,
can't
that
help
is
you,
the best.
philosopher. It's like you're asking too many questions. Like, it's like, yeah, I love it. It's so you just
It's
like I don't know. I don't know if he's avoiding the question or if he's just like he's just no, he's just yeah, you just don't fucking know. You don't like what's in the snake oil you're selling? I mean, snakes and oil probably. Like, I don't know.
There's a
That
great
sound
part too where
accurate?
he's like, oh, I'm sorry you don't have any money because if you had given it to me, I'd triple it for you. And the guy's like, what? Like, how would you do that? And he's like, well, that's what I do for people all over. He's like, well, how do you make money? He's like, oh, don't worry about it. No, but deal is like, this is such blatant bullshit. Like this, the herb doctor is like so openly conning everyone to the point where like when he does go towards the end of his section, because he's here for like 3 chapters, 4 chapters, towards the end of it, he goes into the room and is like, who needs some tincture? And everyone's like, get out of here. You're a crook. I'm not talking to you. Fucking snake oil salesman. You suck. Like it's so funny. But the miser part is my favorite because he even goes on to be like, when he's talking about like how he tripled, he's like, how do you do this with other people's money? How's your gain made? And he's like, to tell that would ruin me. That no one, everyone would be going into the business and it would be overdone. A secret, a mystery. All I have to do with you is to receive your confidence, and all you have to do with me is in due time to receive it back. Thrice paid in trebling profits. And you're like, this is some rich dad, poor dad bullshit going on here. It's like, I have the secret. The secret is essentially, I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm going to do it. And because I am successful, therefore my secret wins.
Yep, yep, yep. And
This book is the template for all of those
yeah.
things.
Oh, absolutely. And that's like I mentioned Maverick earlier, like that takes place like the crux of the movie is a poker tournament and it might be on a riverboat. I don't remember, but that's why I
In
should watch that.
international waters.
Yeah, international waters. No, what I talking about this the old miser and all that. So the person reading the audiobook does a pretty decent old miser, like sickly old miser voice, but he does the coughing very genuinely.
Oh my God.
And it's this like
Oh
and
my God.
it cracks me up more and more every time because it's so absurd. So yeah, this part I am in. This is fun now.
I did screw up though too. So the miser he tries to get the money out of, and then he has the Omni whatever. Balsamic. It's the next one where he meets the sick man who he describes as being like a broken plant, like a withered plant, a plant whose hour seems over. And then he comes and is like, this is the one where he's like, oh, you've got no, energy. You went to this iron thing, like what a crock of shit. And he sells him on all of it. And he's like, oh yeah, Solomon was the best of the herb doctors. He's like, just constantly like making up all this nonsense,
We're
just
out here
pure
just
nonsense.
reaping the fruits of nature and trying to make a better world, and all these yahoos and scammers trying to up your iron levels.
And this is the
What's
part
in
where
medicine? Herbs.
herbs. And this is
Too
where the
many
guy's like, get
questions.
out of here. He's like, just 6 months ago, I went and did a water cure. And now I return 6 months later and I'm even in worse shape. And he's like, that's because
Yeah.
you're doing it wrong. You need the
Hmm.
herbs, turmeric.
Need the
You need some,
herbs.
what are the other?
Oh
Echinacea.
my God. Remember turmeric?
Yeah. I mean, it's an ingredient in a lot of food that I make. And yet I never felt like it cured my ills.
I mean, but I've certainly felt better after eating the food you make.
Well, fair, fair. But this is the one too where he's like, "Well, what's in your thing?" And he's like, "Herbs. What herbs? And what the nature of them, and the reason for giving them cannot be made known.
Cannot be made known. You
Cannot be made known."
philosopher. You
But
philosopher.
yeah,
Take
you are
your,
sick and a philosopher.
yep, take it elsewhere. I
He's
don't
like,
have time
"No."
for this.
I like this. His reaction is, "No, no, I'm not the last. Yeah, I'm sick. I'm not no stinking philosopher." Like, we're so funny. Trust me, nature is health. For health is good, and nature cannot work ill. Like, these are such
Which
great
is
lines.
and so this, yeah, I'm curious to see as we go on if the herb doctor is an actual, like if he is knowingly, consciously conning, or if this is just sort of a prospectus of the different types of cons, like your Kundalini yoga that you mentioned earlier. Not that that's a con, but there are people involved who were um,
I
con
mean,
artists.
they're pretty general grifters and sex maniacs. That's
Right,
kind of goes
right.
par
But
for the course.
like the practice itself is not evil in the
Right.
same way that herbal remedies and tinctures are not evil, but just the blatant kind of, yeah, the confidence that the herb doctor has, it doesn't seem it doesn't seem malicious for gain. It just seems like just ignoring any other alleyways.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
isn't he also just like, ha, science?
He's like, well, yeah, a little bit. And then he's like, the best part is he's like, if you take my medicine steadily without assigning a special day, near or remote, to discontinue it, then you may calmly look for some eventual result of good. But again, I say you must have confidence. It's like, yeah, if you take this now and forever and you
Yeah,
just don't worry about it, someday you're going to be like, oh, I feel better. Like, and then
yeah.
you'll thank me. Like,
And you'll
what?
think because it'll be, yeah.
What?
I do love I think it's at the end of the chapter where he's like, well, he's like, that's our conversation. He's like, well, I'm probably never going to see you again. And then he's like,
You
ooh,
know?
like I didn't mean it that way because I know you feel like you're gonna die soon. Your days are numbered. What I meant it more for me, like this is our final.
Like, he's like, but what if I need more medicine? He's like, go buy it at some shop. But when you do, be sure to open it up and make sure it says confidence in the middle because people are scamming all over
Oh
the.
yeah,
There's a lot of
the
people who are
fucking
trying to rip you off, but I'm not. You just
the
have to
fucking
find the right guy.
watermark. The watermark. That's
Watermark.
amazing.
It's so funny.
Because
It's
I'm
so funny because
like,
you could never, like, you'll never find that. That would never, it's
no,
not real. It's a
ever.
lie that doesn't exist. He's like, yeah, like the part where he's like, I'm never gonna see you again. I love that too. The next part though is he's trying to sell stuff again, and that guy comes and just decks him. Like that's also amazing. Their doctor's like, come on, you got some I got some, what does he call it this time? It's got a different name. He calls it something else. That he's like, it's like a salve that you would rub all over yourself. I think this is the right chapter. But anyways, at the end, while he's reading it out loud, a sudden side blow all but felled him. It was the giant who, with the countenance lividly apoplectic with hypochondriac mania, exclaimed, "Profane fiddler on heartstrings, snake!"
Snake.
Just, I just envision this dude, this like snaky looking oil salesman, just like one of any number of like little too coiffed like people that you could like or have like the right suit on and like are trying to inspire confidence, blah blah. Just standing there trying to like peddle his wares, and some like lumbering like disheveled dude just fucking jacking him, just like taking him down, a la like a linebacker, and being like, "Snake, snake,
Snake.
snake."
Oh my God. I imagine the doctor being either like Tim Allen, but as like the fat Santa, or else, who
God.
would be a great herb doctor is Martin Short.
I could see that, but I think of someone more like
I
just like
don't think
Colonel Sanders, but
yeah,
um
I don't think Weasley is the correct, or like I don't think he's smarmy. I think he's this like unexpectedly sprightly guy, like slightly older guy. I don't know. That's why Martin Short sort of comes in where like he is a little like skittish, but
I think I'm biased because he's the one that's in the Steve Martin book buying commercial, right?
oh yeah, because they're
Hate that
cast
commercial.
cast or cast members, whatever.
I hate that commercial so much. It's so
Mhm.
annoying. It's also like a weird flex of a commercial too. Not to digress on this, but it's for like I don't know Mastercard, Discover Card, Amex, God only knows. It's for some form of payment, and they're in a bookstore. And Steve Martin's like, "I love bookstores." He's carrying these books. He's like, "I've read that one and that one. I've read that one. I read that one." And then Martin Short's going, "Haven't read that. Haven't read that. Haven't read that. Haven't read that." And then they're like, "Will you pay for my books?" He's like, "Sure, I get double cash back from where the fuck it is." But like, it's a weird thing to just be like, "Nope." Don't like reading. Like fuck books. Like it's like a strange commercial. I watch too much sports. I'm here alone. I see the same commercials all the time. So I have to spend a lot of my mental energy analyzing why I hate these things. Um,
I mean,
anyways,
at least you acknowledge and explore your distaste, and that's a lot more than can be said for like probably 58% of our country right now.
yeah, yeah, fair.
I don't know that those numbers are accurate, but
I don't know that numbers matter to be accurate given reading this book. Oh God. So they diss on the Jesuits in the next section where they're trying to figure out his true character because he like comes back and is like, "Yo, is that guy from the Seminole Widow and Orphan Asylum here? Because like I've got some cash for him. Anytime that I sell stuff, give a little cash back." And it's like one of the weirder forms of grifting and of confidence making that feels good on the surface, but is sort of bullshit. And I know I'm walking a dangerous line here, but it's sort of like all the corporate sponsorships around town where it's like we sponsor Wegmans sponsors the jazz festival. Look at this good that we're doing. That's a bad example, but sponsors like Cure for Cancer run or something like that, brought to you by Wegmans. And it's like, oh, thank you, Wegmans, for doing this. Like, I guess you've inspired my confidence in you. Now I'm going to go buy my groceries from your store because you like really try helping like cancer survivors. And
I would
like,
love to pay $8 for a head of broccoli because you
yeah,
are pro cancer research.
because yeah, you're using those profits to sponsor. And it's like, I don't
Ah.
think they are. And also like, fuck Wegmans for any number of reasons, but especially fuck the ones where it's like, will you donate today to this? I was like, I just donated by giving you my money. Like you give part of that money to Food Link then.
Goddamn
Take
right.
like take
Goddamn
like a
right.
portion of your profits from my sale right here and
Yep.
donate it. Do
Yep.
that. But like this, it's such a weird, it's like a very specific low level grift in my mind of these corporate sponsorships of just trying to get you to invest more money in a company without them disclosing how much money they're donating exactly or being transparent about it and to where that's going and what it's doing.
Mhm.
Like if they sponsor, it's like the sort of thing where Wegmans will sponsor a run. We were sponsoring the 5K. Now, to sponsor that 5K, does that just require like filling out the proper formulas for like blocking off streets and like accepting registrations? They don't even do that. Another organization does that. And then all the runners donate money to that organization
Yeah.
for whatever the cause is. Wegmans doesn't do that part of it. They're doing the name on the thing part of it. And that's
They
where
write
like
a
I
check.
think this
They write
guy's
a
a representative of that.
Wegmans writes a check.
Wegmans greases the palm of the local city government.
Mhm.
Heard it here first. Everything you say on a podcast is true. Joe Rogan taught me that.
Who? He's going to be a surprise guest next week. Surprise is out.
Oh my God. Could you imagine if we could get Joe Rogan on to talk about conspiracies and grifting? Beautiful. Like
I'm
it
going
would,
to
it
DM
would
him
just
right
be
now.
him. DM, I'm sure you got his celly on speed dial over there.
Yep.
Can I hit him up?
Ooh, I just accidentally typed in Joe Togan, and I'm pretty sure that's a dark web of feet photos I'm not ready for.
Dark MAGA, man. Dark MAGA. Anyways, then. The last little part here, we get more references to Lazarus. He's looking for the happy man. Tells a story and repeats the idea about charity. Charity never faileth. There's a lot of references to charity here. And then they bring back our initial beggar. And I'm like, did you see him when you came on the boat? And the guy's like, no. He's like, oh yeah, you came on later. So you wouldn't have seen him. But we're starting to come a little bit more full circle on some of those pieces. Now, one of the things that I think is like, I mean, I find this book incredibly funny. I think that those parts that are like really satirical are so spot on and last so well. And this is related to anyone who subscribes to the Mining the Delkey Archive Substack, which you should, because that would be nice. There's a piece coming about satire, these two old Irish satirical books from like the 1920s about society, some Mennepian satires, like making fun of like the way society is organized and especially capitalism and like how capitalism doesn't really function for its good, but instead works off of this idea of what is efficient by like exploiting people. But this sort of like that sort of satire works is my main argument because the thing that it's targeting is never going away.
Yeah.
Like it's always going to be there. Like if you had a satire, like if this book lasts because these people are here. We've never got rid of the used car salesman. It's just like baked into our system now. And like this sort of making fun of them and satirically joking about them it rings true because that's still true. Like, could
Yep.
you imagine if the burnt over district really functioned and like people here were not conned ever again and didn't fall into like weird religious beliefs, so on and so forth. It would be very different. The world would be different. We wouldn't
Yeah.
have the goop stuff. We wouldn't have like these
Vagina candles.
yeah, we wouldn't have this ever rotating cast of what herb solves every problem. There's like,
Yeah.
but we keep doing it. It was CBD not that long ago. CBD was kind of the new snake oil. Like you can rub it on your knee and suddenly you can run a marathon. And like, it's always going to be something. And because it's
No, it's
always going to be
the
something, this lasts.
that's the GL is it GLP-1? I always forget what order, whatever the metabolic.
Dude, all I want is that. I am in the bag. Just, I want to lose 40 pounds and I want it to come from taking a shot in my gut every week. So I don't have to do anything.
Right?
That's all I want is to not have to do. And I'm sure it tells me that's what the ads say. They all sing a song for Wegovy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They got a rhyme. They've got a rhyme. Confidence. I have confidence in them. You wouldn't put out a medicine that doesn't work without a rhyme.
If it a jingle will get you a very long way.
Jingle get you a very long way is true. It is very true. So the thing I'm curious I was starting to say about this is like one of the things I think is difficult for me and in processing this book, and I think the way to read it as we're doing it is actually helpful for that, is that I can't keep track of anyone. Like I don't remember them when he's talking about the characters being inconsistent. I'm like, well, all I know is merchant. All I know is like guy with the black whatever coal company book. All I know is like white cravat, but I don't even remember who that is. Student, I kind of remember, but I don't, I remember kind of vaguely who they are, but they were also like trying to con in on this black coal thing, if I remember. But like the idea of like it adding up to something or like having like the characters move in like a arc or a direction, a character arc or end in some way, that I'm having a hard time getting a finger hold on because it feels like it's like sequential. It's like I think Rodrigo references this too of that kind of like picaresque, moment to moment sort of joking thing that it's not like we're gonna follow the beggar at the beginning or the guy the mute with the chalkboard.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He's just gone, right? Like he
Yeah.
gets alluded to every so often when they repeat like the charity comments, so on and so forth. But he's like not there, and like we're not following him through like this ship or like to lead to anything. Instead, we're watching all these people sort of shift and shift and shift. And as they move from one chapter to another, there's almost a Robert Altman like quality to it, where you like feel like it's like a single cam following from one person to another, where you're like, okay, now the merchant has left, so we're going to follow this other guy to the miser to play. But then every so often it resets, like with the herb doctor kind of comes out of nowhere. But
Yeah.
like, I don't like adding that up is like a hard thing for me to perceive right this moment. And I kind of hope that it doesn't in a lot of ways. I hope it just like is like a series of like loosely hung bits, vignettes.
Yeah. I mean, and do you have any memory other than having read this book before? Like, do you
I remember the herb doctor. I got to that
okay,
section. I was like, oh yeah, I totally remember this.
for this guy?
This is my jam. I remember the
Awesome.
beggar. I remember like feeling like at about this point that I couldn't keep track of who anyone was, and I was just reading it for like the language and the enjoyment, and also reading it very fast,
Yeah.
which does not benefit me when it comes to Melville. Like I have to like read Melville slow, and
Yeah.
like you say, hearing it reading it aloud makes it funnier, makes it more like poignant. Like it makes more sense to me very slowly and like it's this methodical sort of like beats, right? And I remember having to read it very fast. And so it was like very much a blur. And so not really, but I also don't remember what I did 3 days ago. So
Yeah.
20 years is enough time that it's like it's a
You have
big
to
idea.
you have to have confidence in the book, Chad.
I do have confidence. I have complete confidence in the
Total
book.
confidence. I to your point about the lack of names, I am very much okay with it. I think that's something that is very common in literature these days, especially the literature that you and I largely read, both for work and for pleasure, that there's so many names. There are names and names and names and more names, and everything feels like an Icelandic saga at a certain point because you're trying to remember, who is how person A is connected to person F, who was born of person D, and all that and that and that, which is fine. And it can be, I think, very Rubik's Cube gratifying to remember how all those pieces fit together. But I agree with you in that I kind of hope that this is just I agree with you, and I kind of hope that this is just how it stays because I'm feeling very good about not having to remember people and all these very specific imageries. Like you mentioned the cravat, there's the two card sharps and the two like slightly younger guys, and they're like, oh, red cravat and green cravat, like, boo, good luck to them.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's right.
are they ever going to show up again? I don't know, but I remember those two details now, and I this is very detail driven.
It's weirdly, it's sort of like a superhero thing. Like you
Hmm,
can identify people by their costume. You're not gonna
yeah,
you either have to say their name over and over again, or like have something that's a recognizable costume. And in this case, like the gray suit,
yeah,
the man with the book, like there, it's like that's their costume, and that's how you're
yeah.
identifying them. I just have the hard time of like remembering where they were before. And it's not like
Hmm,
how they're related, but like, was this guy the one who gave the money to that person? Or is this the guy who took the money from that person? Or like, what was their interaction? Like, who did the widow and orphan thing? And who gave the widow and orphan guy money? Like, that's the part that I mean is like, I'm sure it's one of the people we just named, but I can't remember. And it was like last week, you know? Like, there's something about that that I think is very freeing and interesting to
yeah,
read. I agree with you.
yeah.
And at the same
Very true.
time, like when you go to speak about it, it becomes like this mishmash of like, oh yeah, there's this but like even right now when we went through this, the miser and the plant dude, they totally became one in my mind. But there's
Yeah,
two separate instances of how he steals money from two separate people using
yeah,
two separate sort of ideas and cons. Like
yes,
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
yes. And it's so quotable. There are so I mean, kudos to Melville House for taking that. I would prefer not to and making it their kind of brand logo sentence because there are so many lines in Confidence Man that I'm just like 100% could see this, like would have a tote bag with this, 100% would drink coffee out of a mug with this line on it. And it's not even like profound. It's just really well put together sentences.
Well, I was thinking like earlier, I meant to say this, but the some of these read like the successories or things that you would just see on Instagram. Sort of like
Yeah.
you can never be ill with nature because nature brooks no ill. And you're like, I don't think that means anything, but sure, like that sounds great. Like there's a lot of lines like that that I think are very funny. And yeah,
Funny
here,
and fun.
this is exactly it. Trust me, nature is health, for health is good, and nature cannot work ill. It's like
Yeah.
that doesn't mean anything, really.
No.
But it sounds great. Like you could put that in that you could become Rupi Kaur. Like you
Yep.
don't have to make sense. Just have
Yep.
to have the right rhythm. So, anyways, any final thoughts for this week?
Um, nope. No
I also
thoughts,
think
vibes.
one last part is like it is subtitled his masquerade, right? Yeah, his masquerade. And that no name thing sort of plays along with that too. You don't know who anyone is behind their costume. And their costume is the cravat, the book, the blank.
Yep.
Everyone's sort of switching costumes at various points in time, being the
Yep.
one giving up the money to the one that takes the money. There's a lot of that transformation, which is referenced in the introduction with a very Eastern religious vibe to it too. So for next week, we go through 20 through chapters 20 through 26, which in my particular book or my particular edition is I can't tell how many pages, but probably like 60, 65 pages. Again, if you're listening to this or in any way, please subscribe to the correct feed. It will be linked in the show notes. Otherwise, at some point in the near future, the old feed will go away. I just need to get everyone moved over as soon as possible so that this doesn't get any screwier than it already has. And again, apologies. Rate us and review us on this brand new feed that has it's like a virgin podcast. It's just got
Virgin
no one's
podcast.
done anything to it yet. It's
Smash that like button, please.
have confidence in us.
Have
We got
confidence in
this.
us.
Yeah, so
Um,
do all those
which
things.
my one of my favorite lines this week is I think it is in chapter 10. I don't care who says it, but he says, and I don't know why there's a but he says, "Your logic I will not criticize, but your confidence I admire." And again, like that but it should be your logic I will criticize, but your confidence I admire, but it's no, it's your logic I will not criticize, but your confidence I admire. And I'm just like, that's a great line.
I have one last bit to add to that leads to my one of my favorite lines of the week is that the last part with the soldier of fortune is the guy that's like, yeah, I went to jail, I was sick, I finally got or did he go to jail? I think he goes to jail. Then he ends up like at a hospital on Blackwell's Island. He couldn't get out. He finally leaves. They give him like a cane. He goes all the way to Indiana, finds out that his brother, whomever, is dead. And is like, well, now I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna get on this boat. And they're like, yeah, I don't believe you. And he's like, I know. And that's why I go tell everyone I'm a soldier. Like, because nobody believes me. So like they'll believe this. They'll give me a lot of money if I just tell them this. So he says, hardly anyone believes my story. And so to most, I tell a different one. And that's like, I think a good thesis line for the book and is like
Yep.
that representation. I just
Beautiful.
love the idea of like, yeah, no, here's my life. Could you help me out? And people are like, yeah, really? Like, no, no, no. I mean, I fought in the war. Oh yeah, veteran. Done. Here's some cash.
And where's that line that I think everyone knows that truth is stranger than fiction?
Fair, fair, fair. It's a whole
But is
thing.
truth more believable than fiction?
Do you have confidence in fiction?
Pressure, time, packed in the back streets and one-ways and detours. High rise, gridlock, skyride. Suddenly, sweltering, do you hear the brown bats heckling? See the cheeks turn to freckling, the people depending. Is this what I have missed? Time won't hold me apart from this.